Hello, everybody, and welcome to Gong Labs Live, episode number 17. I'm your host, as always, Devin Reed, Content Strategy Manager here at Gong.io. Now, first and foremost, I want to give a big shout out to all of our return visitors. We call you the Gong Tribe. These are people that are committed to tuning in every single week and finding ways to improve themselves at their craft. Could be in sales enablement, you might be a closer, you might just be getting started as sales dev, but this show is for you. Now, also want to give a shout out to all the new folks. Thanks for tuning in. We promise the next 30 or so minutes will definitely be worth your time. We're also starting an email subscription list. So if you want, what we're doing is going and sending a calendar invite. So at 10 a.m. Pacific on Thursdays, you'll get an alert letting you know that we're going live with the show. We'll also add you to an email we'll send out about monthly, letting you know some upcoming interviews that we have going on. Last, and of course, somewhat most importantly, make sure that you follow Gong on LinkedIn. This is how you get notification of when we have new content, from videos like this all the way to some of our really popular Gong Labs posts. For today's episode, we have a fantastic interview. We're going to be meeting with Dale Brown, the VP of Operations over at Figure 8, up-and-coming AI technology firm. But first, before we dive into it, let's jump over to Brian Tucker, our leading enterprise sales rep. He has some quick tips for closers.
Hey guys, Brian here. I want to talk about one of my favorite questions to ask opportunities that are a bit later stage when you're trying to figure out when you want or when that deal could possibly close and if you can get it in before the end of the quarter. So my favorite question is to ask the prospect specifically, under what circumstances can we close a deal by XYZ date? And then you just completely shut up. What I've found after asking that question is it forces your prospect to really mentally go through each and every step of what they're going to have to do in order to get that contract executed and to get things approved in a way that they probably haven't with you before. Based off their response, based off what you hear, and based off who they are as a champion, you tend to find out new steps or new things in the process that you didn't quite expect, which gives you a better idea of what you need to do to get that deal across the finish line. Therefore, you can forecast it more accurately. So that's my tip. Happy selling.
All right, everybody. Well, I have with me Dale Brown, who is the VP of Business Development over at Figure 8, a leading AI company. Definitely check them out if you're not familiar. And a little bit of background about Dale. He runs the federal business sales team over at Figure 8, as well as the business development team, which handles all of his go-to-market partnerships. So that's why he's on the show. He's got some great insights to share with us as well. If you want to know a little bit more about him, he got his junior start, if you might recognize him a little bit. He was on a local TV show as a host in Modesto, and he also has some killer dance moves that I had the pleasure of witnessing at the Figure 8 holiday party.
Thank you.
So very qualified to be here.
Thank you.
So thanks for joining. This week what we're covering is authenticity is power as a salesperson, and that can also be the number one barrier is yourself and trying to get that authenticity across. So that's what we're going to cover today.
Yep.
And so I'd love to know first just a little bit more about that. What exactly do you mean by, or to you, personal brand, and why is that so important with a market-facing role?
Sure. So personal brand is to me is neutral. You either have something that supports you or it detracts from you, right?
Okay.
And so traditionally we think about brand as the value of our work or the output of what we do.
Yeah.
But who we are actually speaks volumes, because that's how we get sort of the passport into situations.
Sure.
And so when you think about personal brand, it's how you show up to people, how you're received,
Sure.
and then how you actually gain permission to participate with them or deliver value or be invited back.
Got
Does
it.
that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like a lot of times when people have a good brand, you kind of know that, right? You kind of say, oh, that's Dale. He's known for this. He has
Correct.
a positive brand. I don't feel like you really have like a neutral zone. You either kind of have it or you have a bad reputation, which is people probably aren't talking about you or to you too much because you have a negative brand. What are some of the ways that people build that positive brand and that recognition?
So when people show up and they feel like they've earned the right to be in a conversation, they don't show up as tentative, right?
Right.
And so earn the right could be, the experience, or I have, a solid agenda.
Right.
I know my way around the conversation. I'm treating you like an equal and you're receiving me that way, right? But when we show up on the flip side, if we show up as robotic or like a corporate imagery, or we're fulfilling a role, but we're not bringing ourselves into it, it feels like we're hiding something. Maybe we're hiding ourselves because we're not comfortable. And that can be off-putting to people, and they may not even know why. They may not know why they don't want to talk to that person or work with them. And so it becomes this very subtle thing that you don't really know because no one gives you the feedback. You don't see yourself. You don't get it.
And so what would you say are some of the benefits for the sales professionals that have figured out their true self brand, right? And they feel comfortable in these meetings having. What's the impact of that?
Well, number one is influence, right? And you're going to get that through being confident, being in rapport. But influence is the ability to actually remain in the conversation. Influence is the ability to get back in front of that customer. Influence is the ability to make powerful requests and have them honored and actually advance the conversation towards an end goal. So if you can't influence, then you can't execute as a salesperson.
That makes sense. And I feel too is, you have decades of experience, right? So I could imagine you being one of the people in the room. A salesperson walks in, maybe a more junior one, and can be intimidated, right? If you don't have a brand, if you don't view yourself as a salesperson that has a strong brand, walk into a room with a senior leader, it can be very intimidating. So what are some of the common mistakes that people make in those circumstances?
Yeah. So what happens is sometimes is that you feel like you're prepared. You walk in the room and all of a sudden it hits you, right?
Yeah.
And so this happens to all of us. And what we forget is the other person in the room is human, right? If that person is trying to actually get you to feel inferior for whatever's going on in their head, then it's even easier to isolate it and go, oh, I'm not going to play that, right? It's almost like, oh, this is a challenge, right?
Yeah.
But if it just is, it's one of those things where like all of a sudden, you want to actually get yourself really centered. Like in other words, collect your thoughts, right? Slow your self-talk down and just go first things first, right? Just literally very, very intentional, but stay out of your head.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're not going to show up as authentic if you're in your head. And if you're defaulting to something that feels very mechanical because you're in and out of the conversation with the other individual. If they are casual, they're giving you permission to be casual.
Right.
If they are formal, then you can lead into the formality, but it doesn't mean that you have to ascribe to that with how you are being. In other words, you don't have to necessarily speak formally. You can speak in a way that's comfortable, but literally go to first things first in the conversation, and you'll actually pull that person inward as you're going along. So no matter what you're confronted with, whether it's their title, their experience, their behavior, when you're setting the agenda, and you can control, as we know, you can control conversations with questions, right? So to the point that when you're not feeling that comfort, if you want to buy yourself some time, then you can have some go-to questions that are like, ask about the company, ask about where they live, get them talking a little bit while you're actually finding your center so you can be in the conversation.
So it sounds like you can have a few backup questions kind of in your pocket as a kind of a release valve. If you get a little nervous, you feel a little ahead of yourself, leverage these go-to questions. And while they're answering, obviously try to do your best to listen to what they're saying, but also kind of just gather yourself. Don't have that self-conversation of, am I doing this right? Am I doing good enough? Correct.
And it's like the adage when someone comes to the front door and they're selling magazines, right? They have a script, right? Super mechanical, right? That's not how to ask the questions, right? Yeah. So you could say something like, hey, Devin, I live in Oakland. Like, what about you? Where do you live?
Right.
And you can look at them, you can slow down. I have a tendency to talk fast.
Me too.
So I will slow way down. And that also sort of centers me in the conversation. But you want to actually be interested when you ask it.
Of course.
So you don't seem like you're still sort of preoccupied or you're feeling like you're outclassed because you're telegraphing that.
Right. And if a question comes across as phony, it almost just digs that hole deeper of like, this person really shouldn't be here. They don't know what they're doing.
How quickly, someone like, well, in my type A goes, how quickly can I get them out of here, right? Because I don't want to talk to them anymore. I'm done. This is too much work.
Yes. We sell to salespeople here, as you know, and running into a type A and clashing early can be a devastating meeting.
Sure.
I'm curious, this kind of goes off of our script a little bit in terms of some of the things we talked about, but a lot of times when there's kind of this notion that when salespeople are in a meeting, if I talk quickly, have my West Coast accent, I do the way I do, and then I get into a meeting and maybe someone is type A and maybe could be a little aggressive, not that you are, but they come across, or maybe the exact opposite where maybe they're from the South, they're a little more slower.
Yeah.
There's kind of two camps of thought. One is I should remain exactly who I am. And not mirror them, or the option is to find a way to mirror them because that will make them feel more comfortable, right? If they see that I'm like them, they will like me, therefore it'll go better. Is there a middle ground? What do you think is best?
Great question. So none of the above.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So what you want to do is you want to show up and remember to be who you are, right? So when I slow down, I'm still me. but I'm allowing myself to take responsibility for the communication so that the other person can receive it.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to change maybe my speech pattern. Like I speak with a lot of emphasis.
Yeah.
Right? But I can speak very, very softly with a lot of emphasis. Right? So that's not the different me. It's not a mask. It's just a tone and tempo. So it's called pacing and leading, if you want to talk about a tactic, which is I can enter your world if you talk a little bit slower. Now I can start to speed up, but that's so mechanical again, right? So what I would say is take responsibility for the communication, right? Figure out what makes it comfortable for them to receive you and be in that conversation. And so if it is a certain posture, if it is a certain way of speaking as far as I said, the tone and the tempo, then give it to them. I mean, they're giving you their time, right?
Sure.
So try to make yourself easy to engage with. And I'm not saying be witty or funny or add any shtick to it, because if there's something you've got to actually pay too much attention to, you're still in your head too much.
Right.
Right? So just like be you, but deliver it in a way that they can receive it.
I like it. Can you share with an example? I imagine you're on the buying end, right? Sometimes people are pitching you.
Yeah, both.
You're in sales meetings. I know you're on both, but I imagine, for
correct.
folks that are selling,
Correct.
We'll put you in the buyer's seat.
Sure.
Are there any examples maybe you could share of maybe one or two times a salesperson kind of did that, what you call maybe an on-the-fly readjust?
Yes.
Right? Does that make sense? I mean,
Yes.
I know I'm kind of putting the spot with the story, but you know what I mean? Does any ideas come to mind? Because I know a lot of people are probably like, if I could get a meeting with a guy like Dale, I want to make sure that I nail on the first try.
Yeah, so I've actually been on the other side of that first, so I'll answer both ways if that's all right.
Yeah, please do.
So early in my sales career, I used to have panic attacks. Like literally my solar plexus would get tight, and like I would get on a call and I would be like, oh, like literally it was so confronting. This was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I remember that, and it would be, and then I started like talking softly or what have you, or being disorganized.
Right.
So I happened to be like in that space. I still made the call. This was on the phone, and I was totally messing up, right? And it was like bombing, right? And I literally stopped and I said, I apologize. This is not the way I choose to do business.
Yeah.
Would you give me the opportunity to reset so I can really add the value? And I tried to be I felt I was sincere.
Yeah.
This individual said, sure. Because it wasn't about what I said and it was about how I said it with a level of authenticity.
Right.
And it was somebody owning that I showed up and I wasn't prepared, or I wasn't ready, or I was mentally outclassed or whatever. Humans want to help each other.
Yeah.
And I didn't say help me, but I let myself fail in front of this person and owned it, right?
Yeah.
On the flip side, I've seen people recover because they isolate that things are going wrong, and they'll go back. What I've seen it done well is, in particular, but it wasn't a sales situation. It was with let's say it's a colleague.
Sure.
Came in hot and asked me for particular input on something, and then didn't like the input.
I want coaching, but I want you to give me the coaching that I want to hear now.
and so I'm a pretty direct guy. I'm like, I said, answer your question, but it's not what you want.
Yeah.
This person realized that they were being terse and abrasive, and literally dialed it back and said, I want to go back to that point.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that point. And it was very elegant and very casual, and we actually were able to sort of reset. Right? Now, would that have happened if I didn't own the fact that I wasn't appreciating how I was being received? No. But it didn't faze this person, right? So don't let yourself be fazed. Even if something's going wrong, you can still be authentic, bring it back, and move the ball forward. Go right. They say always be closing, but it's really go for the highest commitment, right?
Yeah, I like that.
Go for the biggest commitment. The biggest commitment you get is that you got to reset, restart, requalify, revalidate, do a nail down, whatever those things are that are part of your process.
Yeah.
That's the biggest commitment, and sometimes it's just owning it and then navigating through.
I like it. So it sounds like one is isolating it, so just kind of acknowledging to yourself that this is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the cause. And then the second part is owning it. It's really tough to do on the call. Sometimes just say, hey, this is not going so well. Can I restart? I've actually done it before on sales calls.
Sure.
Definitely done it in interviews, and it's gotten me jobs before.
Sure.
Or at least didn't lose the job. But I think it's a good transition to the next point, which is people want to take, I think a lot of people in sales, they see the influencers on LinkedIn. They want to have a voice. They know they have a voice.
Sure.
But they lack the ownership of what it really takes to, inject that authenticity and build that brand.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for them in terms of how they could do that?
Yes. So what's interesting about being authentic is you have to be willing to look at yourself and where you are not authentic, where you are showing up that is less than favorable, or you're not being well received, or you're not being understood, right?
Yeah.
And so, shameless plug for Gong, but record yourself, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like literally, listen to the calls.
Yeah.
And you'll
it's tough
hear
to do, but only at first though, I admit.
You'll hear where it just starts to just stutter, right? Or you'll feel like, ugh, that went left, and I should have stayed the course, whatever. So isolating, what you're bringing to the matter, right? Okay. Second thing is that if you are not prepared, if you're not competent in an area, own it and get competent. Like literally, if it's your product, if it's your service, or it's your skill, or how you carry yourself, like once you decide to own that, then you will naturally improve. I think the third thing is like, take the mask off. Like you can be a professional, you can be of a position of influence and still be yourself.
Sure.
Right? For the first number of years of my career, I was very corporate.
Yeah. I was just going to go there.
Right? And so, like, to me, like when people are very corporate with me, I chuckle today, because even in the most buttoned down companies, right?
Yeah.
Like the people that are the movers and the shakers and the influencers are the ones that bring themselves in, right?
Absolutely.
We use the term "be real," and we take that to mean be honest. But the truth is, we're really meaning be authentic.
Yeah.
And be who you are. So take a look at where you are, and then like, are you shutting down size of your personality? I don't mean, wear a unicorn hat to work to express yourself.
Sure.
What I mean is like, who are you on the inside behind all
Right.
of that, and be comfortable with that.
Yeah. It's a funny story. When I first got started in sales, I was actually selling to salespeople, so it kind of came full circle. But I remember I was tons of activity, working hard, and no one was taking meetings. No one wanted anything to do with me. So I sat down with my director, and I was like, I don't get it. I'm working hard. I'm targeting the right people.
Right.
We looked at the emails together, and he kind of chuckled to himself, and he's like, I'm going to read something to you. And he starts reading it aloud, and he goes, does this sound like you? I was like, well, no, not really. He goes, does this sound like anyone you would want to talk to? I was like, probably not. He goes, this is whatever you think the corporate version of you should be, but this is not what anyone wants to do.
Correct.
Like no one wants to do business with this person.
Correct.
And it was really eye-opening. Luckily that happened in the first few weeks of my sales career, not years. But it is hard sometimes to really say, one, I had to isolate. That's how I isolated what was wrong.
Yeah.
Then I had to take ownership and say, you know what, I am better than this.
Yeah.
And the Devin, the version of me that they saw value in hiring is the same version I have to give prospects and clients.
Exactly, right. And those, you have pristine moments in sales, right? Where something moves forward or falls, right? And you get more of those moving forward to the more times that you're trying, right? But even more so, the more times you're holding yourself accountable to becoming better every time.
Yeah.
So if we keep navigating to our weakest link, in other words, navigating around it, right? Yeah. Having enough funnels so that the stuff that's not the close calls that we don't make anyway, that we still can make it, all that stuff. What you're doing is you're actually compensating for a weak link, and it just wears you out. Just get good, or own it, or go to your mentor and say, this is not working, right? Or ask the people you work with, how do I come across?
Yeah.
And what should I do more of? What should I do less of?
Yeah.
And it's not easy, but then it becomes habitual. Where it's not just you're asking for feedback, you're asking them to help you improve.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. You have to really own the answer. It's asking a question you might not like the answer to.
Sure.
But if you're committed enough to solving that, then whatever the answer is really just part of the game. It's part of the process.
Right. And what's interesting is people respect that. They respect someone who wants to do better. They respect someone who, we love the underdog, right? And when we're all starting sales, we're all underdogs, right? And some of us quit, some of us give up. And that's unfortunate, because what happens is you're punctuating a story in your life with a failure when, success is an option, right?
Right.
And so people sometimes just choosing that, I use the term make powerful requests. To do that, you have to be in a position of influence, you have to be authentic, and you have to be thinking about why would this other person, want to do this? Why would they align to what I want? But it's also having the confidence to say, Devin, I have this idea, and I'd like to get your opinion on it.
Right.
And if it makes sense, I'd like to move forward.
Right.
There's a way to say that with confidence in a very easy way, without it seeming like you're going through your sales process 1, 2, 3, right?
Yeah.
Even though the first few times you might totally do that.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Because to get there, you're either going to burn a bunch of meetings, or you're going to talk to your friends in sales, and you're going to help each other out, right?
Right.
That's a better choice. Sometimes it takes us a little bit longer when it costs us a lot of money in the process.
It sounds like a lot of those examples are the way that people can put it into practice today.
Correct.
Right? Is go grab coffee with a colleague that you trust. If you trust your boss enough, I'd say you can maybe start on a smaller scale
Sure.
in terms of kind of these. How did you word it? The request of powerful
requests.
Powerful requests.
The ability to make powerful requests.
Yeah.
Now, this is not my authentic language. It's just something that you get it when I say that. You know
I
what I mean by
know
that.
what you mean by it. And I know that you've on the receiving and giving end, when, like you said with the colleague example, when someone comes in kind of like, meager or unsure, maybe with a half-baked idea,
Right.
versus the, hey, I have an idea, I've kind of put the work in and I'm going to give this something to you and then we're going to like work from it. Kind of, you invest yourself a little bit more.
Right.
Because you know they've prepared and you know that they care.
Correct. Yeah. Well, and you show up, when I say earn the right, that means that you've either done the homework or you have the experience to be in the conversation. Mm-hmm. You carry yourself differently.
Yeah.
You hold your
100%.
shoulders a certain way, you hold your shoulders a certain way, you have the intonation and the tempo a certain way. But if you're tentative about it, it just seems like you show up as an annoyance.
Yeah. A little unsure and not sure. If you're unsure you should be here, I'm unsure if I should be here with you.
Right. And it's super annoying to a prospect. Yeah. It's annoying to an existing customer, but to a prospect, it's ghastly, right? People are like, I just want to get away. Because your prospect all day long spends time on things he or she doesn't want to.
Yeah.
Right? And so if they're going to interact with people that are new, they'd like it to be something that's fluid and frictionless, right?
Absolutely.
So you're adding that to it by showing up and being authentic with them.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the 3 key takeaways is when you're looking to inject your own, self-brand, really building your brand by injecting authenticity. It's one, isolate, find what you're not doing too well at.
Correct.
Challenge yourself and own it. Find a way to, like I said, find a colleague, someone that will give you that honest feedback, and then you got to practice it. You got to record yourself, listen to it. I do video all the time. Sometimes I go back and really wish I would have taken another take, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. Any last words before we move on?
You know what? Sales becomes the most fun and the most personally profitable to the degree that you're authentic, at least in my experience, because you actually are able to enjoy what you're doing because you find out business is about people.
Yes. Love it. Well, are you ready for our hot takes?
Sure. What's that?
All right. So hot takes are less serious and more fun. A couple questions. I say they're personal questions, but they're not too personal.
Okay.
We'll start with, do you have any sales superstitions?
Ooh, no.
Interesting.
That's boring, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
I don't.
You'd be surprised. So I have some common answers are, sales reps that wear lucky socks.
No,
I'll wear a special shirt when on a big closing day or some sneakers, depending on the day. But not having one is totally okay. It means, hey, you don't need it. You owned it. All right. How about this? What was the most inspiring or motivating sales moment of your career?
Oh, wow. Honestly, it was me as a sales manager. Mm-hmm. I had hired a woman who had 3 children, and she had just was done being homeless, actually.
Wow.
And I hired her as a receptionist, but she had so much zest for work and learning that the person she worked for suggested that she go into sales. And I literally took her, under my wing and taught her, and she became a top salesperson with about, it was about 120 days.
Wow.
That was a long while ago. She's a friend of mine on Facebook. And she sent me one of the nicest letters a few years back. She was able to buy multiple houses, put her 2 of her 3 kids through college because she learned how to sell. And this is literally like she had a 3-month-old baby. So that's one of my biggest shining moments in my career is when I actually saw that and was inspired by her. And I was, I'll never forget, her name is Sandra. And I'll never forget Sandra because she added so much to my life by giving so much to her.
Man, we've asked this question a few times. That's definitely the most inspiring in my book. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
If you're preparing for a big presentation, a big meeting, what's your go-to pump-up song?
Oh, wow. I got so many of those.
First to come to mind, you can list a
few. Go-to pump-up song. You know what? This is kind of cliche. It's a few years ago. It was 2012. It's Party Rock Anthem.
There you go.
Yeah.
You can do no wrong. That's a good feel-good song,
yes,
too.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Are you a fan of The Office by chance?
I am, but I can't quote anything.
That's okay. We'll see. We can always swerve around it. So if you were a U.S. version only, I'm not familiar with the U.K. version, but if you were a character on The Office, who would you be and why?
Oh, I would probably be, I don't know their names, but I would probably be the combination of the John Krasinski character and then like the nerdiest guy with the glasses.
So Jim and Dwight are the main 2 guys.
There you go.
So you're a combination?
I'm kind of a combination, yeah.
Why is that?
Because I have moments where I'm super klutzy and super sort of socially tone deaf.
Sure.
Right? And I have other times where I'll just sort of watch what's going on and sort of chime in. I have a super dry sense of humor.
Do you ever find yourself looking to a camera that doesn't exist and just
No, but I'd like to. Actually, I'm gonna start doing that now. I do have this weird thing where I'll come in singing just some random song in the office, and everyone now laughs, but other people start to do it too, so it makes it okay.
If you feel good, you feel good. Let it be known.
Yeah, right. Well, actually, that's the culture of the environment too. It's like it's okay to be you. Sure. If I can come in singing, then you can come in, as you, right?
Sure, we're not. So we're talking about being yourself.
Yeah.
We're talking about office culture a little bit. Why don't you tell me what's the funniest sales moment of your career?
Oh my gosh. I don't think I can say it on camera.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
Do you have a silly one that you can share?
Yes.
Okay.
I was a buyer though at the time.
Perfect. That's fine.
This was back when we used to have desk phones and voicemail, where you push a button on the phone and get your voicemail, and all of a sudden somebody called me and they were selling something to me, and apparently there was on speaker. Mm-hmm. Well, they forgot to hit hang up. And so he went on to his conversation with his friend that was in the room, talking about his love life and situations, and then went into like very explicit detail. Sure. And then it goes beep, and then I get a call back. Hi Dale. Wow, I'm not sure what to say about you hearing all of that.
Right.
I laughed. I mean, It was somebody else. It would have been super bad, but I'm glad it wasn't me.
Hey, he isolated his mistake. He owned it. He called you back and owned it.
That's right.
Hopefully, he didn't practice by doing it more.
Yeah, but I mean, it was, he got lucky. It was me, because I was like, whatever, people do what they do. He didn't. I mean, some of the things that we all do, we wouldn't want recorded in certain times, right? So I just laughed it off.
I have a similar one I'll wrap up with. It was around the same time where I was sending these emails early in my career that no one wanted to respond to.
Sure.
But I had the first I remember clicking send to a CEO, which is always doesn't, even now I still get a little hesitant. You want to make sure you just want to make sure it's perfect. It's like the head person. Their company name was Roundtable Technologies, and it was at about 11:55 a.m. and lunch was on my mind, and I said Roundtable Pizza, and reaching out to him. So I did get a response, but he was like, "Hey, I think you got the company name wrong." But I did own it, and ended up getting a meeting with he didn't take the meeting, no shock, but he gave me somebody else on the team.
You didn't bring a pizza to the meeting.
I didn't bring a pizza. No, I wasn't that bold. I wasn't that authentic yet. Well, Dale, this has been awesome. I really appreciate the time. Hopefully we'll have you back soon.
Thanks very much.
All right, see ya. There you go, everybody. That's this week's episode of Gong Labs Live. Thanks for tuning in. Quick shameless plug is Gong is hosting our first industry event called Celebrate, the Revenue Success Summit. We'd love to see you there. So if you want to get tickets, jump over to Gong.io/celebrate. You can check out some of the awesome speakers that we have lined up, including Jeffrey Moore, who's the author of Crossing the Chasm. It's definitely an event you won't want to miss. Now, as always, we leave you with our weekly sales meme of the week. Always challenging to start off a new month. We're only on week 2. First day working in sales versus 5 minutes into the day. Sales can be thrilling, but not always a thriller. Always a classic. Can't wait to see you next week, Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific. See you then.